Hey guys, I'm getting ready to put a new coil spring in the rear of my Humvee. I'm just going to run through the procedure for doing that. First thing you should do if you're working on the front is unhook your stabilizer bar right on the lower A-arm, pull that bolt out on both sides, and that'll allow these A-arms to drop down for you when the time comes. Next thing, unhook the tie rod. Take off the castle nut, and you can either whack it here or you can put the castle nut back on upside down and hit it from the bottom. Just put the castle nut back on to protect your threads. And then the other thing is just maybe wrap your hand right around the boot and then start heating it from generally the bottom, and just heat this thing up. And I'll tell you what, you get enough heat into that knuckle right there and this thing will pop out on its own. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to unhook the top ball joint. And same deal there. I left this ball joint loose because when I did the hub seals, because I knew I was going to be doing the springs. I haven't driven it either, so. And going to unhook the vent. I buggered this vent line up when I was doing the hub seals. I don't know what the heck I did. I forgot that it was hooked up or something, so we'll unhook that. And let's see. You can see where I've got the jack latched on. Here is the bolt here for the lower shock absorber mount. That's where it's sitting at the moment, and got it all blocked up fairly close to where I'm working, so the blocking is on this side of the vehicle. And I'm hoping that I'm high enough here so that this A-arm will really drop right down nice and I can get that spring right out of there. And then as I go to do that, as I go to lower things, I will loosen up those two bushing bolts right there, one on each end, and that makes this A-arm drop down a little more easily. Let's see, at some point I'm going to take the shock out. Once I start getting things all disassembled here, I'll pull the shock out. Everybody says don't do that. and I get it, but leaving it in seems like a real pain in the butt to me. So I started to try it, and then I was like, no, I'm just going to stand clear of the shock. I'll just be careful. And so that's what I've done on all three corners so far. All right, so we'll get started here. 1 1/16 inch socket. Yours won't come out like that. You're probably going to have to heat this knuckle. Next thing, I think I'm going to go ahead and pull this plug out and take out the bolt that holds the half shaft in place. Nine 9/16 inch socket. Don't lose the washer down inside. So I pull the socket out just a little bit, so it's just barely on the head of the bolt, so I don't push that lock washer off inside. Put the plug back in so we don't lose any oil. All right, gonna unhook the vent line. Yours won't come off that easy. I've had mine off, so that's why it does that. We'll undo the top ball joint castle nut. you're gonna have to heat that. Guarantee it. All right. Now, the half shaft is disconnected. Make sure I'm jacked up pretty good here. I wanted to make sure that my blocking wasn't going to get in the way of the A-arm when it drops down. I don't want it to impede the movement. All right, now I'm going to move the jack and put it under the castle nut on the lower ball joint. And next we'll pull out the bolt out of the top here, take the nut off it. I used a 36mm socket for that and a 3/4 inch drive breaker bar and an 1.25 inch wrench on this side. 36mm. Mine is a 1/2 inch drive, which I'd rather have 3/4 inch drive for these, because I don't believe you can use a 1/2 inch drive breaker bar without breaking the breaker bar. So I got my 3/4 inch breaker bar, and I got one of these this morning. Paid $30 for that. It's just that this thing is less likely to break off than you are to break a 1/2 inch breaker bar. And this seemed to work for me. So I've broken some 1/2 inch breaker bars in my life, putting a pipe on them and they break. I'm working by myself, so I'm going to put a C-clamp on this to hold that wrench right on that bolt, around the head of that bolt. And this works on the back, but I couldn't make it work on the front. So I had to have my wife hold it with a long bar on it, and it was not easy. The thing is really tight. There we go. I got just the right amount of pressure on this thing, so that bolt is free. I'm gonna leave it for the moment though. I'm gonna just look things over. Yeah, I am. Oh, gotta get this castle nut off here down. All right, so we'll take the castle nut off the top ball joint. There we go. And that's it. We're ready to let this thing down. All right, we're gonna go ahead and pull the bolt out. I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, wow, I'm in a really dangerous place right now. You are. I'm gonna be off to the side. It's not gonna, that spring's not gonna take off though, because the shock is still in place. All right, let's pull the half shaft out before we drop it down any further. Not gonna do it. All right, I gotta let it down a little lower. So I feel safe because the shock absorber is still in that spring, so I'm gonna go ahead and do it. There we go. I think that half shaft will come out of there now. Maybe not. There we go. Put some paper towels in the hole where the half shaft goes. That's good. Let's throw a cover over that. Okay. Put a strap on it. And this will hopefully keep from beating up the ball joint, the lower ball joint too bad. There we go. And now we're going to let it down the rest of the way. All right, I can tell the spring's unloaded, so I'm going to go ahead and drop the shock out through the bottom. So I'll take those 2 bolts out. All right, I'm gonna have to jack it up just a little, I think. Okay, the shock is out. I just gotta let the rest of the tension back off that coil spring. And it might fall out, so don't be surprised. There you go, look at that. Okay, gonna strap those to my feet later. Bounce around the yard a little bit. All right, next thing I'm gonna do is loosen up those bolts there in the A-arm. Those bolts in the A-arm are 1 1/8 inches. See how I've got that pipe on there? It works. All right, I had to pull the jack completely out from under there in order to get that A-arm down far enough to get the spring in place. And then once I set the spring in place, I just lifted it up by hand and held it up, and I'm working the jack back in under as we go here, as we speak. So one more shot and I'll have the jack where I need it to be. Bear with me here. That should be it. Yep, that's good. Okay. So the jack is back under that lower ball joint castle nut. And before I lifted the spring up in place, I looked at this end here and I had it about 1 inch from that tab before I folded it up into place. And so when you're done jacking this thing up, you'd like there to be about 1/2 inch of space between this end and that tab right there. And then it'll find its way into its spot. But that's what you're looking for. All right, this is where everybody thinks you're stupid. But I just feel like I'm out of the way. So that's how I'm going to do it. I'm going to jack it into place. keeping an eye on it. And I'll tell you what, the higher we get, the more locked in at the bottom this spring becomes. So my jack is sliding sideways as I do this. I could have the jack turned out, you know, straight, and then the jack could roll, but that would put me in the path of that spring. So that's why I'm doing it this way. And it worked on the other ones, so. The shock's back in at the bottom, and now I'm going to go ahead and jack it a little more aggressively and get it so that the top hole lines up on that shock. And the only thing I would say is that I'm not thrilled about jacking on that lower ball joint like this, but you know, that's the only way really that I can get enough leverage to get this thing up where I need it to be. Make sure the shock is fully extended before you start jacking and try to get the bolt back in. I haven't had any problem getting the bolt out or back in on any of these. So, you know, hopefully you won't either. Just make sure the shock is all the way out. Okay. Seal looks good. Oh, I'll beat that seal up. Oh boy, let's see here. There we go. There we go. Now, let's get that rod back in there. Lift up a little bit. There's that. Okay, and now pull it back down. Put the castle nut back on. Alright, I gotta put this bolt back in that holds the half shaft in place inside the geared hub. I'll tell you something, when you take things apart on the Humvee, everything has red Loctite on it, which is the extra strong, you know, super strong. I'm using the blue, and like I'll tell you, when I took this bolt out right here, it's in there. It's not coming out. So that's what I'm going to use. I'm just sticking with the blue. Here's my socket. I use deep well. That's what I've got. I'm going to put this pencil in the end so that I don't push that bolt all the way into that socket and lose the washer off into the hole here. It's just my technique. All right, that's started. 37 foot-pounds. It's a 9/16 socket. It's starting to rain, I don't believe it. That's good. I got a little Teflon tape on there. There was a sealant on there before. It's funny, when you take yours apart, take a smell of that sealant. Mine smell like lemon. I couldn't believe it. I'm not kidding. It smelled like lemon. All right, so somebody will have something to say about me using Teflon tape, but that's what I'm trying. The torque for this cover, for me, I'm using 18 Newton meters, which is how my torque wrench is graduated. Yep, you saw I gave it a little extra. All right, we'll hook up the vent pipe here. There's that. Put the castle nut on there. The big castle nut is the one that goes on your tie rod ends. There's two smaller, shallower ones that go on the ball joints. And this one has a washer, the other two don't. Bottom ball joint, 73. Tie rod end, 70. Top ball joint, 65. 37 foot-pounds in there for that bolt and 18 Newton meters for the cap. The castle nut on the top ball joint, like I said, it's 65 foot-pounds. You know, I can't get my torque wrench on there, so what I did was I set the torque wrench to 65 and I tried it on one of the other bolts just to get a sense of what 65 would feel like to me. My wrench is a little bit shorter. It's half the length of my torque wrench, so I figure I'll push about twice as hard. I know it's an amateur way of doing it, but I don't know how else to get that, you know, the torque where I want it. So I know it's going to be a little tighter than what it should be, but that's my technique. All right, got that bolt back in. It's all tight. Now I just got to tighten up these A-arm bolts here. All right, I think we're done. I'll look it all over, make sure I didn't forget anything. Throw the wheel back on. It pains me greatly that I can't take you for a ride right now to try out these new Hoffman springs. The deal is that I've got a destroyed tire here and I'm on a huge back order to get these replaced. So I'm going with aftermarket wheels and tires. So with the way things are going right now, it's going to be a while before I get those. So I'll just keep tinkering on it while I'm waiting. Differential seals are the next thing. See you later. Hope this helped you. Take care. Bye.